Hello, this is Andrew with Missing Remote, and this is a Ubiquiti UniFi G4-Bullet camera. There actually isn't, on paper anyway, a whole lot that distinguishes this camera, this G4-Bullet camera, from the G3-Bullet camera. It has slightly more resolution. It's a 4 megapixel camera, so it's 1440p versus 1080p, but otherwise it has a very similar 24 frames per second AF power, although some of the G3s will do 24 volt passive like this one, but the modern G3 bullets are AF as well. So here's the camera. You can see that in contrast to the G3, it has a blue Ubiquiti logo on it instead of the gray one. But otherwise, physically, it is almost exactly the same. And it is even, take this off, this part, the mounting bracket, is compatible with a G3 mounting bracket. So I could, if you have G3 cameras, you can just swap these as simply as just changing this part, which is pretty cool. There is a little plastic thing here and over the infrared ring that you'll want to leave these, kind of a pain to get off, but you want to take these off. There you go, you can see that. You want to take these off after you install because they're there to protect the lens and the screen and the IR section from you scratching it during the installation process. If you're installing this in a high light environment, or you're worried about it getting blown out from the things that are surrounding it, you can make this shade a little bit longer. Otherwise it sits like that. As I mentioned, this is a AF powered device. Do not feed passive, 24 volt passive into it. It'll probably blow the thing up. This is the mounting bracket. It goes, wherever you would install. Actually, get this open. This part goes wherever you would want to mount it. There's 2 screw holes. You get screws in there, and then you just punch a hole through there. This bit has quite a bit of flexibility to go around and install however you want. And then there's a seal in here that, first time I installed one of these, it took me a little bit to figure out how to use the seal. But basically, what you do is it just goes in here like that, and you install the Ethernet cable through there. Now you can do that. You can actually, this will fit around. It doesn't look like it, but if it already has the RJ45 plug on there, it should fit through that. But I usually end up pushing the bare wire through, the bare Ethernet cable through, is putting that through there, and then actually doing the wiring the jack on this side because it's just a little bit easier. But with that in place, water and bugs and things can't get, well, they're less likely to get through that hole. That is really all there is to the installation, or to the device itself. The main reason why I got this is not because of the increase in resolution. I don't think that it is more pixels, and so it's nice, but there's not a huge difference in what you're going to see in a 1440p camera versus a 1080p camera, in my opinion. Obviously that will depend a little bit on what you're using it for. But the main reason why I got this is that it supports smart detections with a Protect NVR, so either the UDM Pro or a UNVR, or I believe Unifi has kind of leaked a little bit of information about a version of the UNVR which is even bigger. It has more hard drives in it, essentially. I think it's a UNVR Pro or something like that. There's been some noise about that in I think the firmware releases for these guys. They have an NDA program, but they're not really good about keeping their NDA stuff under wraps. But anyway, they use this, it supports smart detections, and that is a feature that I didn't think that I would like as much as I do, that my G4 doorbell has. So that's why I got this, and I'm gonna go install it, and then we can go have a look at what that looks like.
So I've been using the G4-Bullet for long enough now that I feel comfortable talking about how I feel about it, whether I'd recommend it. And the short answer is I think it's a solid improvement over the G3-Bullet, and I would recommend getting it. And I kind of regret not getting more of them when I was provisioning cameras for this location. The main reason for that is the smart detections. I think that this is where the real value of the camera is. Now, the resolution bump is nice, and there is definitely a noticeable improvement for the 1440p versus the 1080p of the G3 bullets, and we'll look at that in a little bit. But the real value here is in smart detections. So I'm going to go ahead and click one of these, and you can just see in a moment here it'll pop up a rectangle where it detects a person, and as long as you have that highlight smart detections enabled, that's how that works. And what that does is it allows you to take an enormous data set, all of the recordings, the motion recordings that the Protect NVR collects, and sifts that down into a much more manageable data set. So finding out when did your package get delivered, why did your dog go crazy at 3 a.m., all of that stuff is just so much more manageable because of the smart detection than it is without it. And it works for both people and vehicles, as you can see here from up there. Now, I don't have any vehicles because we don't really have a view of a driveway or anything. But if you were to put one of these to point at a driveway or the street or the entrance to your business, that would be of incredible value as well. So let's take a look at resolution real quick. So we'll live feed this. Go ahead and go to 4 megapixels and then pop this full screen. Now this is a 4K display. We're going to encode this video at 4K. So we can, you will be able to, if you want to, look at this the same way that I am. So if we look at, the lines along the tree branches here, the lines along the shed here, lines along the shed here, you can see a little bit of aliasing, and that's to be expected. You are taking a 1440p image and then blowing it up to 4K. But this is still very usable. If somebody's walking around here, as we saw in one of the earlier videos, you would be able to tell that somebody was there. Now, obviously, you're not going to get great detail on their face until they get pretty close to it. And I'm not sure that even if you were to go to a 4K camera that you would be able to get that from, a distance up here. Let's take a look at a 1080p camera now. Flip that to 1080p, go to 4K, and here we can see that there's an appreciable difference in resolution and the artifacts that are present. So if you look along the tree here, you look along these bushes there, you look along the lines here, it's definitely a noticeable difference. Absolutely noticeable. But do you lose any capability by using a 1080p camera? Probably not. I don't know that while this image quality is lesser, obviously, the line between being able to recognize a face isn't going to be that different. They're still going to have to be pretty close for you to do that. And so that's why I say, yes, the resolution upgrade it's nice, it's fantastic, but I wouldn't swap my 1080p cameras for 1440p cameras if that was the only thing that the G4-Bullet provided. But the G4-Bullet has smart detection, and that's where I think that the real value of this camera is. So I would highly recommend it versus the G3. But UniFi's 4K cameras are just crazy money, so I'm not quite ready to make that jump. The last thing I want to look at is the power consumption, and we can see here it is, well, if I don't hover my mouse over it, is 2.13 watts, which is very reasonable for what it is. So anyway, hope you found that useful. If you did, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you have questions or comments, drop them below, and I will get to them as soon as I can. Thanks.